Hey everyone, welcome to Deep Dive Friday on IdeaCaster. I'm Joe, and today we're doing something a little different. We're going to dive into one business idea for the next 35 minutes. And this one, well, this one's been eating at me all week. So, picture this. It's Tuesday morning, 7:45 a.m. You're the VP of engineering at a Series B startup. 6 months ago, you had 12 people in your team. Today, 63. You just got out of a meeting where your CEO announced you're doubling revenue again this year, which sounds amazing, right? Except you can't hire fast enough. Your best engineer just told you that he's quitting because the culture doesn't feel the same anymore. And you have no idea if your systems will handle 10x the load. Oh, and by the way, you've never done this before. Nobody prepares you for this. There's no manual for going from 12 to 63 to 162 people in 18 months. And you're probably thinking, well, just Google it, right? Read some leadership books. Yeah, that's what I thought too. But generic leadership advice is useless when your company is literally a different organization every 90 days. Today, we're breaking down a business idea that's hitting right at this exact moment of chaos. A premium community for executives and VPs navigating hypergrowth. And before you roll your eyes and think, oh great, another Slack group, stay with me here. Because the economics on this, they're fascinating. The need, it's desperate. And the timing couldn't be more perfect. This is Deep Dive Friday, January 9th, 2026. Let's get into it. Okay, so let me paint you a fuller picture of the problem we're trying to solve here, because I think most people dramatically underestimate how intense hypergrowth actually is. I was talking to a VP of sales last month. Her company had just raised their Series C, $30 million. She should be celebrating. Instead, she's in her car in the parking garage on the phone with me and almost in tears, because her CEO just told her she needs to scale the sales team from 15 reps to 50 in the next 6 months. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's her job, right? She's the VP of sales. Sure, but here's what that actually means in practice. It means that she has to hire 35 salespeople, which means interviewing probably 350 candidates. She needs to build out an entire sales enablement function that doesn't even exist yet. She needs to rewrite the playbook, because what worked with 15 reps breaks completely at 50. She needs to hire managers, but all of her current reps are too junior to manage. So she's hiring externally, which means cultural fit might be a challenge. She needs new tools, new systems, new processes. Oh, and she still has a quota. The company doesn't stop growing while she's building the machine to grow faster. And here's the kicker. She's never done this before. This is her first VP role. She was a director at a stable company before this. She took this job precisely because it was a rocket ship, and now she's holding on for dear life. So what does she do? Well, she searches on Amazon for books on scaling sales teams. She finds a couple written by executives at Salesforce and Oracle. They're fine, but they're generic. They talk about principles and frameworks that work when you're growing from 500 people to 1,000, not 15 to 50. She tries to find a mentor, but her network is mostly people at stable companies. They mean well, but they don't get it. She thinks about hiring a coach. She finds some executive coaches online. They're $300 to $500 an hour. She'd need to pay out of pocket because her startup doesn't have a coaching budget. And honestly, most of these coaches have never worked at a hypergrowth startup either. They're asking her questions like, all right, what does success look like for you? When what she really needs is someone to say, okay, here's exactly how to structure your sales team at this stage. Here's the comp plan that works. And here's how to forecast when everything's changing weekly. So she's stuck, and she's not alone. There are literally thousands of executives right now today sitting in this exact position. They're at companies you've never heard of. They're well compensated, they're smart, they're capable, and they're drowning in problems that are incredibly specific to hypergrowth. All right. I know. I know you're thinking, well, these are executives who are making multiple six figures. Should we really feel bad for them? Fair point. But here's why this matters for a business idea. When someone is desperate, when they have money, and when existing solutions don't work, that's not just a problem, that's an opportunity. All right, let's talk about the market opportunity here because the numbers are actually kind of wild. How many companies are in hypergrowth mode right now? Well, let's define hypergrowth. We're talking about companies growing at least 100% year over year, typically series A through D, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. Now, in the US alone, there are roughly 2,000 to 3,000 venture backed companies that fit this profile at any given time. Some years it's more, some less, but let's just say 2,500 to be conservative. Now, how many executives and VPs does each of these companies have? Early on, maybe 5 to 8 people at the VP level or above, but as they scale, that number grows to 15 or 20. Let's say an average of 10 per company across the whole range. That's 25,000 people, 25,000 executives facing these exact scaling challenges. But here's where it gets interesting. This isn't a stable pool. These companies are either going to succeed and grow into their challenges, or they're going to fail, or they're going to stabilize. The average time a company spends in this true hypergrowth, about 3 or 4 years. So you have natural churn built into this model, but you also have natural replenishment. New companies raising Series A, new executives joining these companies, new cohorts entering this phase constantly. Now let's talk about willingness to pay, because this is where the economics gets really compelling. These executives are typically making between, I would say, $200,000 and $500,000 a year, depending on the role and stage. Many of them have significant equity upside as well. But more importantly, they have budgets. Most VPs have some form of professional development budget, typically anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 a year. And if they don't, they'll pay out of pocket for something that actually solves their problem. They pay $600 for a conference ticket without blinking. They buy books and courses. Some are paying $500 an hour for executive coaches. A membership at $500 to $1,000 a month, that's actually a total bargain if it works. But here's the timing element that makes this particularly interesting right now. We're in this weird moment where there are more hypergrowth companies than ever before, but the traditional support systems are breaking down. Used to be you'd have your venture capital firm helping with this kind of stuff. They'd bring in experts, they'd run programs for the portfolio companies. Some still do, but they're totally overwhelmed. The best VCs might have 50 to 100 portfolio companies. They can't provide hands-on support to every executive at every company. Meanwhile, the problems are getting harder. Remote work means you're scaling teams across time zones. The talent market is more competitive. Technology stacks are more complex. Regulations are more complicated. You're not just scaling, you're scaling in hard mode. And the existing resources, they're not cutting it. LinkedIn Learning isn't going to teach you how to reorganize your engineering team while you cross the 50-person threshold. Harvard Business Review case studies are from companies 10 years ago with completely different contexts. So you have this massive, affluent audience with urgent, expensive problems and no good existing solution. That's the opportunity. Okay, let's get into the actual business model because this is where we move from interesting problem to, wait, how does this actually work as a business? At its core, this is a membership community. But let me be very specific about what that means because community is one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around until it's meaningless. Here's a structure I'm envisioning. You have 3 membership tiers. Tier 1 is your base membership. Let's call it core. $500 per month or $5,000 per year if you pay annually. What do you get? First, access to the community platform itself. This is probably a combination of something like Circle or Mighty Networks for async discussion, plus regular Zoom calls. But the key is curation. You're not just throwing everyone into a Discord server. You're organizing people by role, by stage, by function. VPs of engineering have their channel, heads of revenue have theirs. Series A folks are separate from Series C folks because their challenges are different. Second, you get frameworks and resources. This is where someone like Molly Graham comes in. If you don't know who Molly is, she's worked at Facebook, Google, Quip, Lambda School, always in these hypergrowth phases. She's written extensively about scaling frameworks. You'd have a library of these frameworks. Here's how you think about org design at different stages. Here's how you forecast when you're doubling every year. Here's how you maintain culture through rapid growth. Real tactical type of stuff. Third, weekly expert sessions. You bring in someone who's been there, done that. Maybe it's a former VP at Stripe talking about scaling customer success. Maybe it's someone from Figma talking about product org design. These are live, interactive, small groups of maybe 50 people max, so it actually feels intimate. Fourth, peer pods. This is crucial. You get matched with a small group of 5 or 6 people in similar roles, and you meet monthly. They become your personal board of advisors, the people who actually get what you're going through because they're also going through it too. Okay, so that's tier 1, $500 a month. Tier 2 is premium, $1,000 per month or $10,000 annually. Everything in core, plus you get quarterly one-on-one coaching sessions with vetted advisors. These are people who've been VPs or C-suite at successful scale-ups. You also get access to smaller, more exclusive sessions. Maybe instead of 50 people in that expert call, it's 15, and it's more workshop style. Tier 3 is advisory. This is your high-touch tier, $3,000 per month or $30,000 annually. Everything in premium, plus monthly one-on-one coaching, direct access to a dedicated advisor, and the ability to bring specific problems to experts in the network. This is the tier for C-suite executives at later stage companies or people who just want that white glove experience. Now you're probably thinking, okay, Joe, who's paying $3,000 a month for a community? Great question. And honestly, not that many people. But hear me out on the economics. Let's say you launch this and your goal is to get 100 members in 1 year. Let's say you launch this and your goal is to get 100 members in year 1. If 70 people are on core at $500 per month, that's $35,000 per month. 25 people on premium at $1,000 per month, that's another $25,000. 5 people on the advisory at $3,000 per month, that's $15,000 more. That's $75,000 in monthly recurring revenue. $900,000. Now, what does it cost to run this? Let's break it down. You need a community manager, someone full-time who's facilitating discussions, organizing events, doing member success. That's probably $80,000 to $100,000 fully loaded. You need to pay experts to show up for sessions. Maybe you pay them $2,000 per session and you're doing 1 per week. That's about $100,000 a year. You need coaching fees for premium and advisory tiers. Let's say coaches get paid $200 per session. If you're doing 50 sessions a month across all your premium and advisory members, that's $10,000 a month or $100,000 a year. Technology costs, platform fees, Zoom, whatever, maybe another $12,000 a year. Marketing and member acquisition, maybe you're spending $50,000 a year on content, ads, events, things like that. So total cost around $362,000. Revenue at 100 members, $900,000. That's 60% margin a year. And this scales beautifully because your biggest costs are fixed or semi-fixed. That community manager can probably handle 200 members. Those expert sessions, the marginal cost of going from 50 to 75 people on a Zoom call is 0. By year 2, if you get to 250 members with a similar mix, you're looking at around $2 million in revenue with maybe $700,000 in costs. Still a 65% margin. And here's the thing about this business model. It's totally sticky. If you're actually solving real problems, if you're giving people value from their peer pods and the frameworks and the expert access, why would they cancel? The problems don't go away. If anything, they get more complex as companies scale. I know what you're thinking. Joe, these numbers sound great, but you're making a lot of assumptions about who will pay and how much. Fair enough. We'll talk about risks later, but the unit economics here are compelling. You're building a recurring revenue business with high margins and natural retention. All right, so let's say you're actually going to do this. You're going to build this community. How are you going to actually get it off the ground? Because here's the tricky part about communities. They're worthless until they have enough people to be valuable. It's a chicken and egg problem. So here's the playbook I'd run with if I were building this and launching this tomorrow. Step one, and this is crucial, you need to start with content and credibility. Nobody's going to pay $500 a month to join a community run by someone they've never heard of with no proof they know what they're talking about. So before you even think about launching a paid community, you need to spend 3 to 6 months building an audience. And here's how I'd do it. Start a weekly newsletter specifically for executives at hypergrowth companies. Every week, you're publishing a deep dive on a specific scaling challenge. Week 1, how to think about your first layer of management. Week 2, compensation frameworks for high growth environments. Week 3, reorganizing your team when you cross 50 people. Real tactical type of stuff. Be very specific. Where does this content come from? You interview people who've done it. You reach out to VPs and former executives at companies like Notion, Linear, Retool, Vercel, all of these companies that have scaled rapidly in the last 5 years. Most of them will talk to you if you make it easy and you're asking good questions. You publish these as newsletter issues, but you also pull quotes and frameworks and publish them on LinkedIn and Twitter. You're building a content engine. Your goal in these first 3 to 6 months is to get 1,000 newsletter subscribers who are actually your target audience. Not growth hackers, not entrepreneurs, not randos. VPs and executives at venture-backed startups. How do you get them? A few ways. 1, DM people directly. Hey, I'm starting a newsletter for VPs at hypergrowth companies. Would love your input. 2, you're asking everyone you interview to share it with their network. 3, you're posting consistently on LinkedIn where these people are actually hanging out. It's not fast, but it's methodical. Step 2, once you have that initial audience and you've proven that you can create valuable content, you launch a beta. Here's how I'd structure the beta. You email your newsletter list and you say, hey, I'm launching a private community for executives navigating hypergrowth. I'm taking the first 50 people. Normally, this will be $500 a month, but for founding members, it's only $250 a month for the first year. Why $250? Because you're being honest that it's not fully built yet. You don't have all the frameworks. You don't have weekly expert sessions yet. But what you do have is curation. Everyone in this group is qualified. They're all facing similar challenges, and you're going to facilitate real peer connection. You also tell them, as a founding member, you'll help shape what this becomes. I'll run monthly feedback sessions where you tell me what's valuable and what's not. Here's the key. You're looking for 50 people who will pay $250 a month, which is $3,000 a year. That's $150,000 in revenue. That's enough to pay yourself modestly, cover costs, and prove the model. But more importantly, you're looking for signal. Will people actually pay for this? If you can't get 50 people at $250, you're definitely not going to get hundreds of people at $500. Step 3, you deliver obsessively for these first 50 people. You set up the community platform. You organize people into channels by role and stage. You personally facilitate discussions at first. Someone posts a question, you make sure they get good answers. You make intros between members who should know each other. You set up those peer pods. You manually match people. 5 to 6 people in similar roles. You introduce them. You give them a template for how to run their monthly calls. You check in to make sure they're actually meeting. You start doing monthly expert sessions. Maybe you can't afford to pay big names $2,000 yet, but you can find people who will do it for free because they want that exposure or because they believe in what you're building. Maybe you pay them $500. The point is you start delivering on your promise. And you build the framework library. Every month, you're adding 2 to 3 new frameworks or resources, templates, guides, playbooks, real IP. Step 4, after 6 months of running the beta, you do 2 things. First, you survey your members. What's working? What's not? What would make this worth $500 a month? You're listening obsessively. Second, you get testimonials and case studies. You find the members who've gotten the most value and you ask them to document it. How has it been being a part of this community? How has it impacted your work? What specific problems did you solve? What would you pay for this? You're building social proof. Step 5, you launch for real. You announce that you're going to open up the community beyond the founding 50. The price is now $500 a month for the core tier. And you're introducing premium and advisory tiers for people who want more. You create a landing page with all the testimonials, show the framework library that you've built, list the experts you've had. You make value proposition very, very clear. And then you market it. You're still publishing that newsletter every week. But now, every month, you're doing a webinar or a LinkedIn Live where you teach something valuable for free and pitch the community at the end. You're asking your existing members to refer people. Maybe you give them a month free for every qualified referral who joins. You build a list of 500 VPs at hypergrowth companies. You can find them on LinkedIn, on company about pages, and Crunchbase where companies announce funding. You send them personalized messages, not spammy, salesy stuff. But you say, hey, I run a community for VPs at companies like yours. Here's what we do. If you're interested, happy to chat. Step 6, you scale. Your goal is to get 100 members in year 1, 250 in year 2, 500 in year 3. You're not trying to build a community of 10,000 people. This is intentional, exclusive, intentionally high touch. As you grow, you're reinvesting revenue into making it better. You hire that full-time community member, you pay bigger names to come do expert sessions, you build better technology, you add more coaches for premium and advisory tiers, you're compounding the value. Now, I know this all sounds very neat and linear. It won't be. You'll have months where nobody new joins. You'll have people who cancel. You'll have experts who flake on sessions. But the core playbook is sound. Build an audience first, launch a beta to validate, deliver obsessively, then scale. The timeline I just described is about 18 months from starting the newsletter to getting 100 paying members. That's real. That's doable. And at that point, you have a business doing close to $1 million a year in revenue. All right, let's talk about what could go wrong, because I don't want to paint this as a risk-free guaranteed winner. There are some real pitfalls here. Risk number 1, and this is the biggest one, you fail to achieve critical mass. Communities live or die based on network effects. If there aren't enough people, there aren't enough conversations. There isn't enough value. And here's the tricky thing about a niche community like this. You can't just let anyone in. If you lower your standards to hit member numbers, you start accepting people who aren't actually VPs at hypergrowth companies. The quality tanks and your best members leave. So you're walking this tightrope where you need enough people to create value, but not so many people that it gets diluted or unfocused. That's hard. And how do you mitigate this? Honestly, it's about the beta. If you can't get 50 people to join at a discounted rate when you have some credibility and an audience, that's your signal that the market isn't there or you haven't proven the value proposition. Don't push forward hoping that it'll get easier, because it won't. All right, risk number 2, churn. Remember, people are in hypergrowth for a finite period. Their company succeeds and stabilizes or fails, or they leave for a different role. That means natural churn that you can't control. If you have 20 to 30% annual churn, which is realistic, you need to constantly be acquiring new members just to stay flat. That means your content engine, your marketing, your referral system, all of that has to always be on. How do you mitigate this? You make the community so valuable that even when someone's company stabilizes or they switch roles, they stay because they've built relationships they don't want to lose. You also build mechanisms to help transition. Maybe you have an alumni tier that's cheaper for people who are no longer in hypergrowth but want to stay connected. Risk number 3, competition from free alternatives. Here's the thing. Someone could create a free Slack or Discord for VPs at startups tomorrow. In fact, those probably already exist. Why would someone pay $500 a month for your community when they could just join a free one? The answer is curation and quality. Free communities are usually a mess. They're not moderated well, they're full of people who aren't the right fit, the conversations are low quality, and there's no structure. You're charging for curation, for structure, for expert access, for frameworks that took the time to develop. But that only works if you actually deliver on those things. If your paid community feels like a free Slack group with a paywall, people will leave. Risk number 4, dependency on a few key members or experts. In the early days especially, you might have a few members who are super active and drive a lot of value. If they leave, it can create a void that's hard to fill. Same with experts. If you're relying on a couple big names to draw people in and they stop participating, that's a problem. So how do you mitigate this? Diversify. Don't let your community become dependent on any one person, including yourself. Build systems and structures that work even if specific people aren't there. And overinvest in member success so you have a deep bench of happy members who are advocates. Risk number 5, and this is more subtle. You get the positioning wrong. If you position this as a networking opportunity or a networking community, you're competing with every other professional network out there. If you position it as a coaching program, you're competing with executive coaches. If you position it as an education platform, you're competing with courses and content. You need to position it as something distinct. It's not networking for networking's sake. It's not generic coaching. It's not a course. It's an operating system for navigating hypergrowth. It's a support system you wish you had. That positioning matters because it changes how people think about the value and the price. And then here's a personal risk. This business requires you to be the face of it, at least initially. You need to be comfortable being public, creating content, being in conversations. If you're someone who wants to build a passive income business and step away, this isn't it. At least not for the first few years. But here's the thing. All of these risks are manageable. They're not the market doesn't exist risks or the economics don't work risks. They're execution risks, which means if you're thoughtful, if you're customer obsessed, if you're willing to iterate, you can navigate them. Okay, let's bring this all together. We spent the last 30 minutes talking about a premium community for executives at hypergrowth startups. What are the key takeaways here? Number 1, there's a massive underserved audience of people facing incredibly specific, high-stakes challenges that existing resources don't address. They have money, they have urgency, and they're desperate for solutions. That's a powerful combination. Number 2, the business model is compelling. High margins, recurring revenue, scales elegantly. You're not trying to build a billion-dollar unicorn here. You're building a business that could do $5 to $10 million a year with exceptional profitability, which is an incredible lifestyle business. Number 3, the playbook is clear. Build an audience through content, validate with a beta, deliver obsessively, scale thoughtfully. It's not easy, but it's not mysterious either. Number 4, the risks are real, but they're manageable. This isn't a sure thing. You need to execute well. You need to maintain quality. You need to keep attracting new members. But nothing about this is structurally broken. Now, who should actually do this? Ideally, you've been a VP or executive at a hypergrowth company yourself. You have the credibility, you've lived the problems, you understand the audience. Someone like Molly Graham would be perfect for this. And in fact, she's already halfway there with her writing and frameworks. But even if you haven't been an executive yourself, you could do this if you're willing to position yourself as a curator and facilitator rather than the sage on the stage. Your job is to bring together the people who have the wisdom, create the structure for them to share, and make sure members are getting value. That's a different skill set, but it's doable. Here's what I'd do if I were starting this Monday. I spend the weekend making a list of 50 VPs or former VPs at companies like Stripe, Figma, Notion, Linear, Vercel, Airtable, all of these companies that have scaled in the last 5 years. On Monday, I'd start reaching out to them with a simple message. I'm documenting frameworks for scaling hypergrowth companies. Can I ask you 5 questions about how you approach X? I'd take those responses and turn them into newsletter issues. I'd publish one per week. I do this for 12 weeks, which gives me 12 really tactical pieces of content. I'd post clips and highlights on LinkedIn daily during these 12 weeks. I'd DM people who fit my target audience and ask them to subscribe. I'd ask every person I interview to share it. After 12 weeks, if I've gotten to 300 to 500 newsletter subscribers who are actually my target audience, I'd email them about the beta. Hey, I'm launching a community for the first 50 people. Here's what it is. Here's the price. Here's why I think you should join. If I get 25 yeses, I'm encouraged. If I get 10, I need to rethink. If I get 0, the market has spoken. But I'd at least have an audience and some content assets to do something else with. That's the plan. 12 weeks to validate interest, then 6 to 12 months to run a beta and prove the model. You're 18 months from 0 to potentially having $1 million business. Now, is this the right business for you? I have no idea. But if you care about helping leaders navigate complex challenges, if you're energized by community building, if you like the idea of high margin recurring revenue businesses that don't require venture capital, then yeah, this is worth exploring. And here's the beautiful thing. The first 12 weeks cost you almost nothing. Time, yes, but money, no, not much at all. You can validate this idea with sweat equity before you spend $1. All right, that's the deep dive. A premium community for executives navigating hypergrowth. The problem is real, the market is there, the economics are sound, and the playbook is clear. Whether you do this or not, I hope this episode gave you a framework for thinking about how to build a high-value community business in any niche. If you want to go deeper on this, if you have questions, or if you're actually in do this and want to share your progress, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. All right, everyone, that's it for today. Tomorrow, we've got our Saturday special format coming your way, so make sure you subscribe. Until then, keep building, keep learning. I'll talk to you tomorrow.